The sun blazed gently over Arlington National Cemetery. The morning was calm, sacred, and wrapped in silence. The kind of silence that feels alive, not empty, but heavy with memory. Every stone, every grave marker, whispered of sacrifice and honor. And there, in the heart of it all, a single figure stood tall. The tomb guard. His steps were sharp, his uniform flawless, his weapon gleaming under the light. Every motion was precise, as if carved from stone itself. The crowd gathered behind the rope line, hushed, watching in awe. Most stood with respectful silence, their heads bowed, their phones held low. But not everyone felt the weight of that moment. Among them, a mother and her young son whispered, giggling. At first it was small quiet jokes, stifled laughs. But soon, the mother's voice rose above the silence. Look at him, she chuckled, pointing. He's like a robot, doesn't even blink. The boy's eyes lit up. He began mimicking the guard's march, stomping his feet in exaggerated rhythm. The sound of his sneakers broke the sacred stillness. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some frowned. Veterans in the audience clenched their jaws, hands tightening into fists. One elderly man whispered under his breath, "Show some respect." But the guard did not move. His face was a mask of discipline, his eyes locked forward, unflinching. Every step he took echoed like thunder on marble. Yet the mocking grew louder. The mother laughed openly now. "See, honey, he's not even a real soldier. Just a man playing dress-up." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman pulled her daughter closer, shielding her from the tension. Phones came out, recording the unfolding scene. The air was electric, filled with a storm about to break. And still, the guard marched on. The narrator's voice cut sharp. The crowd thought he would step aside, that he would ignore the insults. But in the next moment, the world learned what honor truly means. A hush fell over the gathering. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. The boy crept closer to the rope line, giggling as he exaggerated the guard's march. The mother egged him on, her laughter echoing like a crack across sacred ground. And then the guard's boot slammed down with a sound that shook the air. He froze mid-step. His weapon shifted ever so slightly. His silence now felt like thunder held in chains. That the boy stopped instantly. The mother's smile faltered. The storm was about to break. The guard's stillness wasn't just training. It was personal. Every step he took on that marble path carried the weight of ghosts. His name was never announced to the crowd. To them, he was simply the sentinel. But behind that flawless uniform lived a man who had known the sting of loss and the fire of war years earlier. In the barren deserts of Afghanistan, he had served on the front lines. Dust storms, night raids, and gunfire had been his world. But what haunted him most wasn't the battles. It was the brother he couldn't save. Private First Class Daniel Reeves. His best friend, his shadow, the one who always cracked jokes before missions, who dreamed out loud of one day being buried with honor at Arlington National Cemetery. One night, under a sky that burned with tracer fire, Daniel was hit. The guard then, just a young soldier, dragged him through the dirt, blood soaking his uniform, praying with every breath. But the desert took Daniel before dawn. When the casket came home, draped in the flag, the guard stood at attention beside it. He made himself a silent vow that day. "Every step I take from now on will be for you, brother. For you and for every name carved in stone." That vow carried him here. To the old guard, protectors of the tomb of the unknown soldier, hours of brutal training, sleepless nights, blistered feet, and relentless inspection had forged him into more than a soldier. He became a living symbol of respect. To outsiders, the silence of the guard seemed simple. But to those who knew, every second of stillness was a battle won. A war fought against distraction, against weakness, against the temptation to be anything less than perfect. And so, when the mother and her son mocked him, it wasn't just disrespect to a uniform. It was disrespect to the fallen, to Daniel, to the countless souls who never came home. The mother didn't know this. To her, it was just a sunny outing, a sightseeing trip in Washington, D.C. She wore expensive sunglasses, carried a designer bag, and held her phone ready for photos. She wasn't cruel at heart, just ignorant. She whispered to her son with a grin. "See, honey, he's just pretending, just marching back and forth like a toy soldier. Isn't it funny?" The boy, maybe 8 years old, giggled and copied the guard's steps. His sneakers squeaked against the stone path. The more people frowned, the more he laughed. What the mother failed to notice was the crowd's reaction. Veterans in the front row stiffened, their eyes narrowing. A man in a wheelchair, his leg gone from a roadside bomb, shook his head in disbelief. One woman pulled her daughter closer and whispered, "Don't laugh. That soldier is guarding something sacred." But the boy didn't hear, and the mother didn't care. To understand the weight of this place, you need to know the ground itself. Arlington isn't just a cemetery, it's a sanctuary of sacrifice. Every grave is a story. Every name etched in white marble is a son, a daughter, a father, a friend, and at the center of it all lies the tomb of the unknown soldier, a monument to those whose names will never be spoken, whose bodies were never identified, but whose sacrifice was as real as any. For over a century, guards have stood watch, day and night, through storm, snow, and heat. They march exactly 21 steps, pause 21 seconds, then return. The number isn't random, it's a symbol of honor, the same as the 21-gun salute given to presidents and fallen heroes. The silence isn't empty, it's a language of respect, but not everyone who visits understands. Some treat it as a spectacle, a performance, a backdrop for vacation photos. And that morning, the mother and her son crossed that line, mockery in a place of mourning. Still, the guard did not break. His body was iron, his mind a fortress. Because discipline isn't just about standing still, it's about carrying the memories of the fallen without letting the living shatter your composure. A veteran in the crowd whispered, voice trembling with anger, "If she only knew what he's seen, what he's lost." Another veteran beside him clenched his jaw, muttering, "He's not guarding a building, he's guarding every soldier who never came home." Phones were raised now, some to capture the disrespect, others to document the guard's unflinching resolve. The moment was already becoming more than an incident, it was a story waiting to spread. And still the boy stomped his feet. Still the mother smirked. They thought the guard would remain a statue, forever silent. But silence has its limits, because soon the line would be crossed. And when it was, the world would learn what honor truly means. The marble plaza at Arlington seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. The sun glared overhead, the air thick with silence, broken only by the sharp click of the guard's boots. But silence has enemies. It began as a snicker. The boy, emboldened by his mother's careless whispers, exaggerated the guard's rigid walk. He lifted his knees comically high, swinging his arms in a cartoonish rhythm. His sneakers slapped against the pavement, echoing across the sacred space. The crowd's mood shifted instantly. Veterans at the front line turned, their faces etched with disbelief. One woman hissed, "Stop that," under her breath, but the boy only grinned wider. The mother laughed, not softly, not nervously, loudly. "See, honey, you're better than him already," she said, her voice cutting through the hush like a knife. The boy puffed out his chest, mimicking the guard's stare, then burst into giggles. The sound bounced off the stone, clashing with the solemnity of the place. The guard did not flinch. Every step measured, every turn flawless. His weapon gleamed in the sunlight. His face was carved from discipline itself. But behind his eyes burned a memory, the face of Daniel Reeves, his fallen brother, the promise he had made at a flag-draped coffin. "Every step is for you," and so, he marched on. The mother wasn't finished. She folded her arms and raised her voice as if daring the guard to break. "Is this all he does? Just walk in circles, waste of taxpayer money if you ask me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. A man in a wheelchair turned sharply toward her. His empty pant leg hung over the side, a stark reminder of sacrifice. His voice cracked with fury. "Show some respect, lady." But she rolled her eyes, brushing him off like a nuisance. "Oh please, it's just a job. He's not fighting anyone. He's not a hero, he's just marching." Gasps echoed. Someone whispered, "Doesn't she know where she is?" Another muttered, "Unbelievable." Phones were now up everywhere. The incident was being recorded from multiple angles. The disrespect, the defiance, the silence of the guard, it was all captured. The boy stomped harder, grinning with mischief. He strutted right up to the rope barrier, marching in mock parody. His arms swung wildly, his head bobbing like a puppet. The laughter of his mother egged him on. Veterans shifted angrily. Parents shielded their children. The sacred air grew thick with tension, and still, the guard marched. His eyes never flickered, his jaw never trembled. His silence was more deafening than the laughter. A tourist whispered, "Why doesn't he do something?" Another replied softly, "Because discipline means more than anger." But deep inside the guard's chest, his heart pounded like a drum. He was trained to endure, to remain unshakable. Yet he knew if the line was crossed, his duty was clear. The mother leaned closer to her son, smirking. "Go on, honey. Show him how it's done. Show everyone the big soldier isn't so special." The boy stepped forward, pressing against the rope as if it were nothing more than decoration. His sneakers nearly touched the sacred marble reserved for the guard alone. Gasps tore through the crowd. A veteran shouted, "Hey, get that kid back." But the mother ignored them. She smirked at the cameras now, basking in the attention. "Oh, relax," she said dismissively. It's not like he's doing anything important, it's just a show. The guard's boots clicked. He turned sharply, facing the direction of the boy's mock march. His weapon shifted in his grip. For the first time, the air trembled with the possibility of response. But still, he held his silence. The boy laughed louder, swinging his arms like a clown. The mother clapped, encouraging him. Perfect. Just like him. See. You're already a soldier. Gasps spread like wildfire. Reporters zoomed their lenses. Children clutched their parents' hands. A woman whispered, "This is going too far." The guard's stare bore down like steel. Every muscle screamed to act, yet discipline held him firm. The silence was unbearable. Then a veteran in the crowd, his voice breaking with fury, yelled out, "You don't laugh here. You don't mock the dead." The mother froze for a split second, then smirked again, as if pride was more important than humility. Maybe the dead should rest then, instead of putting on a show. The words hung like poison in the air. The crowd erupted. Some shouted angrily. Others gasped in horror. But the guard, he took one more deliberate step. The sharp click of his heel struck the marble like thunder. His body stiffened. His weapon tilted, gleaming in the sun. And then he stopped. The boy faltered. His laughter cut short. The mother blinked in confusion. The plaza fell into absolute silence. Even the birds seemed to vanish. The guard's head turned. Slowly, deliberately. His gaze locked onto the boy. His face was the face of a soldier who had stood against war itself. His presence was crushing. The mother's smile wavered. The boy shrank back behind her. The guard had not spoken. Not yet. But the storm was building. The crowd knew what was coming. The line had been crossed. And when it broke, no one there would ever forget what they witnessed. The plaza was a battlefield of silence. On one side stood the mocking laughter of a mother and her son. On the other, the unyielding stillness of a tomb guard. The guard's boots had stopped mid. His weapon gleamed, angled ever so slightly, a sign the crowd recognized. This wasn't routine anymore. This was different. The boy froze, sneakers inches from crossing the rope. His face no longer carried mischief, only confusion. He looked up at the guard, expecting him to remain silent, to remain a statue. But then, a voice detonated across the marble, sharp and thunderous. "It is requested." That all remained silent and respectful. The sound rolled like cannon fire. It rattled the air, bounced off the white headstones, and cut through the laughter like a blade. Gasps erupted. A woman screamed in surprise. A veteran snapped to attention instinctively, saluting with tears in his eyes. The mother's sunglasses slipped down her nose. Her smirk vanished. Her son gripped her leg, eyes wide in terror. The playful mockery was gone, replaced by the weight of a soldier's command. The guard did not move after speaking. He stood, weapon angled, eyes locked forward. His jaw was set, his chest steady. He had said only one thing, but it was enough to shift the entire earth beneath them. Silence fell like a hammer. A silence thicker than stone. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. The crowd stood frozen, their phones recording every second. Dozens of lenses captured the moment a man who had endured war, loss, and sacrifice drew a line no one dared to cross. The mother tried to recover. Her voice cracked, defensive. We're just joking. It's not that serious." But her words felt small, pathetic. In the shadow of that command, her excuses shriveled. The boy whimpered, tugging at her sleeve. "Mom, stop." The crowd stares pierced through her like arrows. Veterans shook their heads. Parents whispered to their children about respect. The atmosphere was no longer against the guard, it was against her. The guard shifted again. His boots struck the marble as he resumed his march. Every step measured, every pause deliberate. He didn't need to say more. His discipline was louder than her arrogance. But the mother, red-faced and desperate, lashed out. "He's just a man in a costume. You people are overreacting." Her words echoed, but this time they sounded empty. Hollow. The boy buried his face in her side. Ashamed, the guard's next turn brought him within yards of the mother and child. His eyes, though trained to look past the crowd, seemed to burn straight through them. His weapon rested against his shoulder with the precision of a warrior who had carried it through real battlefields. The crowd parted emotionally. Every soul present knew they were witnessing something sacred, a confrontation not between people, but between mockery and honor. The mother's protests died in her throat. She felt the crushing weight of every gaze, every recording phone, every veteran whose scars spoke louder than words. And then, something remarkable happened. From the crowd, a young veteran in his 20s stepped forward. His uniform was gone, but his bearing was unmistakable. His voice shook, but carried with it a soldier's authority. "Lady, this isn't a show. That man isn't acting. He's guarding every brother and sister who never came home. You laughed at all of them, the crowd murmured in agreement. Tears glistened in the eyes of strangers. Even the air felt charged with justice. The mother had no reply. She clutched her son, her face pale, trembling, and through it all, the guard marched, perfect, unbroken. His silence now was not weakness, it was strength, refined by fire. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of truth. Each pause was a reminder that tradition endures mockery. Each turn was a line drawn between chaos and discipline. The boy whispered again, voice small, almost lost in the air, "Mom, he's not a robot, he's a hero." The words stabbed deeper than any rebuke. The mother's face crumbled, her pride evaporated, replaced by something far heavier, shame. The crowd stood taller, united now not by anger but by reverence. Veterans saluted, civilians lowered their heads. Even children, sensing the gravity, grew still. The moment had transformed. It was no longer about a mother's ignorance or a child's mockery. It was about a soldier's silent, shattering arrogance with nothing but honor. Reporters captured the scene, their cameras focusing on the guard's face, and moved unbroken. Within hours, those words, "It is requested that all remain silent and respectful," would circle the globe. But in that plaza, in that heartbeat of time, the silence afterward mattered most. Because in that silence, everyone understood, respect isn't optional, honor isn't entertainment, and discipline is stronger than arrogance. The mother lowered her gaze. She pulled her son back behind the rope, her hands trembling. For the first time all day, she said nothing. The guard continued, flawless, eternal. And the crowd knew, they had just witnessed a tradition defended not with fists, not with anger but with the strength of stillness. The storm had broken, and what followed was history. The air at Arlington was thick with awe. The mother clutched her son behind the rope, silent now, shame painted across her face. The boy, once bold and mocking, pressed close to her leg, eyes wide and trembling. The guard, calm and precise, resumed his march. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, reminding everyone present of the sacred duty he carried. From the side, a uniformed officer approached. His boots clicked against the marble in sync with the guard's march. The mother looked up, panic replacing her earlier arrogance. "Excuse me, ma'am," the officer said, voice firm but polite. "You need to step back and leave this area immediately." The mother stammered, we were just." The officer's gaze didn't waver. "This is sacred ground. Your behavior was inappropriate." The boy whimpered. His mother tugged at him, hurriedly backing away as whispers rippled through the crowd. Reporters' cameras zoomed in on every second. Phones recorded the entire scene. The mother tried to protest again, but her voice sounded small, powerless. The crowd's collective disapproval weighed heavier than any words. Veterans shook their heads. Children hid behind parents. Even tourists who had initially ignored the event turned to witness the fallout. The officer escorted them out. The mother's face remained pale. She dared not look at the guard as she was led away. The boy's earlier laughter was gone, replaced with realization, fear, and awe. The crowd held its breath. The guard, untouched by the spectacle, returned to his post at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Every movement was flawless, every pause deliberate. The sunlight glinted off his polished boots, off the rifle he held with reverence, and off the medal pinned to his chest, a silent reminder of sacrifice and service. One veteran whispered, voice trembling, "That man, he's not just a soldier, he's a guardian, a sentinel for every soul that never came home." A young woman recorded the final steps, her camera capturing the quiet heroism that dominated over mockery, arrogance, and ignorance. It was a moment that demanded respect, a moment that demanded silence. The mother and child were gone, but their story had already been written into the annals of the plaza. Phones would upload the videos, social media would explode, headlines would read, "Tomb guard silences mockery with one command, inspires millions." The viral clip began circulating instantly. Comments poured in, "Unbelievable discipline, true heroism, the world needs more like him." But Arlington didn't need the internet to remember. Every veteran, every parent, every child present carried the memory. They had seen honor defended without anger, without force, only through discipline, presence, and silent authority. The guard, now back at his post, adjusted his uniform and weapon. He stood perfectly still, unwavering. A small breeze passed through the plaza, rustling flags and leaves. His gaze softened ever so slightly as he looked at the tomb, his mind briefly flicking to Daniel Reeves, his fallen brother. "Every step," he thought silently, "every step for you." No applause came. no fanfare. Only the quiet murmur of the crowd, the rustling leaves, the distant hum of Washington, D.C. Yet in that stillness was the loudest statement of all. Discipline conquers chaos. Honor outlasts arrogance. Respect is earned, not demanded. As the mother and child disappeared into the distance, the boy whispered, barely audible, "Mum, he's a hero." The mother said nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't laugh. She only held him close. The lesson sinking in. Too late to undo the moment, but impossible to forget. The guard remained at his post, a silent sentinel, unbroken. The plaza, once disrupted by mockery, had returned to order, reverence, and awe. And for the witnesses, it was clear, some lessons cannot be taught. They are lived, and sometimes they are delivered with nothing more than a step, a pause, and the weight of honor. The plaza had returned to calm. The mother and child were gone, escorted out by security. Their earlier laughter replaced by silence, shame, and realization. Arlington, once disrupted, felt whole again as if the very stones themselves had exhaled. The guard remained at his post. His boots tapped in perfect rhythm, his rifle angled with precision. Yet beneath the unshakable exterior, there was a moment of quiet reflection, a pause deeper than any he had ever taken in front of a crowd. He thought of Daniel Reeves, his brother in arms whose life had been claimed by a desert night long ago. The promise he had made at Daniel's casket burned bright in his mind. "Every step I take here is for you, always for you." A small crowd lingered, silent, paying their respects in quiet awe. Some had pulled out their phones, others just stood, heads bowed. Whispers of admiration floated across the plaza. A retired colonel approached quietly, saluting the guard. His eyes were wet, reflecting the sun like small mirrors of pride. "Well done," he said softly, voice trembling. "You reminded us all why we stand here. You reminded us why we honor them." The guard nodded slightly, acknowledging the respect without breaking his stance. There were no words needed. Actions had spoken louder than anything ever could. A young boy, the same child who had mocked him earlier, whispered from the edge of the crowd, almost afraid to speak, "Mum, he's a hero." The mother said nothing. She stood silently, her head bowed. The lesson was already learned. Humility had replaced arrogance, shame had replaced laughter, and understanding had finally replaced ignorance. The guard's gaze fell upon the tomb. He reached into his uniform pocket and touched a dog tag, worn and scratched from battle, belonging to Daniel. He held it for a moment, letting memories of loss and sacrifice fill the space between steps. Every life, every sacrifice, every soul, he thought. I honor them with each step I take. The plaza remained still. A gentle breeze stirred the flags above, whispering through the white marble and green grass. For the guard, the battle had not been against the mother, the boy, or even the gawking crowd. It had been against disrespect and the erosion of tradition. And he had won, silently, with discipline, composure, and unwavering honor. A veteran in the crowd murmured to a companion, "You see that? That's what a hero looks like. Not loud, not flashy, but steadfast, unmoving, eternal in duty." The guard returned to his march, flawless, each step a heartbeat of remembrance, a rhythm echoing through time. The plaza had regained its sanctity, the lesson had been delivered, and history had quietly recorded another story of honor. He allowed himself one fleeting thought of peace. For every moment of mockery, every laugh aimed at him, there had been a greater purpose fulfilled. He had stood for the fallen. He had stood for tradition. He had stood for every visitor who needed to witness real courage. And in that stillness, he found it, a quiet satisfaction deeper than applause, deeper than recognition, because the truth of honor does not need validation. It exists. It endures. It marches on. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across Arlington, the guard's reflection merged with the light. He straightened his uniform, adjusted his gloves, and resumed his position. The plaza was silent, reverent. The lesson had been taught without a shout, without a clash, only through the weight of his presence. And for those who had witnessed it, it was a moment they would never forget. A moment where discipline met defiance, and honor proved victorious. The plaza fell silent once more, the echoes of the morning still lingering in the air. Arlington had returned to its eternal calm, but those who had witnessed the moment knew they had seen something extraordinary. A single soldier, standing perfectly still, had taught a lesson far larger than a scolding could convey. Discipline had triumphed over mockery. Stillness had outweighed arrogance. Honor had spoken louder than any words. The mother and child had left, carrying with them a lesson they could never forget. The boy had learned, even in whispers, the weight of true respect. And for everyone else, the veterans, the civilians, The tourist's sit was a reminder of what it truly means to stand for something greater than oneself. The guard returned to his post, calm, flawless, unwavering. A gentle breeze stirred, and for a fleeting moment, the wind seemed to echo the silent heartbeat of those who had given everything. Every step he took was not just for show. It was for the fallen, for the brave, for every soul who had made the ultimate sacrifice. And in that quiet, one truth became clear: tradition is not weakness. Silence is not submission. Discipline is strength. This is a story of courage without flash, heroism without noise, and respect that demands nothing but reverence in return. As you leave this story behind, remember this: honor is shown in our actions, not our words. Discipline is more powerful than chaos, and sometimes the loudest lesson is taught in silence. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on the heroes around you. Share their stories, support their legacy, and never forget the strength of one person standing for what is right can inspire countless others.